Yo, what's happening with what's happening?
Welcome to What's Happening. I'm Brad.
I'm Fred.
It's the show we talk about what's happening. What's happening with you, bro?
Hey, it's my son's first birthday.
Man,
So celebrating the year of life for the little man. You know, so just chilling. What about you?
man. Well, first off, happy birthday to my nephew, man. It took you quite a few shots to get that son. You know,
Shot fired.
But
But
hey,
nah, for real, it did though. Like I wasn't giving up, so it was.
hey, as long as you got it, man. Happy birthday, man. I'm, I'm cool over here, man. You know how we do on What's Happening. We keep it real. This is take two of the episode. Man, this is take two. We did the episode, and somebody, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm not gonna look at no hands and point at myself, but somebody messed up on the recording of the last episode, and it didn't quite work out that well. So our fabulous guest, she agreed to come back and let us re-interview her, so that way we could get you guys a quality episode in our continuing series of women making history. Miss Nadean Muniz, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing superb. So, the best part about us doing like a freestyle variety podcast is that we don't have lines or anything like that. So, if by chance you happen to watch this episode or parts of this episode on the Facebook Live, okay, you're getting just a separate version of what you already watched. So it just is what it is. But we talked to some amazing women the last couple episodes regarding their stories and what led them down the paths towards their businesses and how that's impacted their family life and things of that nature. And it's gonna be a little bit of a different feel with this episode, but an impactful story nonetheless, just as impactful if not more. And one thing we talked about, Nadine, is that you and I have never had a face-to-face conversation, although we've known each other for over a decade at this point. It's just funny how you can know someone and be involved with them, and thanks to the advances of technology. But like I said, I've never had a face-to-face conversation with Nadine at all. So, in your own words, why don't you share your story with our listeners?
Alrighty. So, the way that I actually know Brad is he was good friends with my first husband, who was killed in a car accident in 2012. So at the age of 22, I became a widow, and at the time, our daughter was 8 months old. And I've since remarried and had more children. We've adopted a child out of foster care. Our third child, who's 4, is adopted, and then we have our next in line is 8 months younger than her. So that's super interesting. And then I had a stillbirth in March of this year, or last year. Yeah, it's been a year now. So that's my story.
There's a lot of heartbreak and a lot of heartbreak and a lot of love, and there's just a lot of emotions that have happened. Is that roller coaster that you've ridden over the last decade or so. And when Kyle passed away, you guys have been married for less than a year, and your baby was, you just said 8 months?
8 months, yep.
Yeah. And you had been married for half of that time, 4 months?
Yeah, about 4 or
ish.
5 months ish. Yeah, something like that.
And so, kind of talk about what it was like to, in less than a year to go from being newlyweds to a single mother.
It's so funny because you know how Facebook memories pop up every year? The year that he died, so he died January 31st, and January 1st of that year, I posted about how we had just had this amazing year and I couldn't wait to see what was in store for us. And then 30 days later, he passed away. And I look at that still now being like, what the heck was I thinking? Like, did I tempt fate by being like, this is so amazing. We did such a good thing. Um, but it was like one of the biggest highs to lows I think I've ever experienced in my life, where it literally just felt like the bottom dropped out on us. And, you go into marriage, you have all of these plans for the future. You have all these ideas of what your life is going to look like. And then, he passed away and like all of that went away. I distinctly remember just being like, I just need to get, like, it wasn't even a matter of me being happy. It was just me surviving at that point. It was just me making it through another day for Navadi, who's our daughter, by the way. So it was all consuming, I think, just complete devastation of my life.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna get in there, Fred. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I was. I just, it takes me a second how I'm gonna ask the question. Um, but so in that time frame, now becoming a widow and having to, you know, learn to do everything on your own, not having him. I don't know to what capacity that you know, roles you guys play, because everybody household is different. I don't know if both of you worked or if, one worked, one was at home, but having to consume two roles, how did that play a part with trying to survive?
Well, I would say that, we were very kind of self-sufficient before he passed away. We both were equal partners in the relationship, I guess you could say. I worked, he worked. He would watch Navadi while I went to work. I would watch her while he went to work. So it was like we never really got to see each other that often because it was just kind of like we were passing through, I guess. Um, and then suddenly he died, and I could not, I had just started my job in November, so 2 months before he passed away. So I didn't have like FMLA time. I didn't have any real time that I could take off to kind of plan these things. And I took a week and a half, and during that time it was just trying to figure out, okay, now who's going to watch Navadi? How am I going to pay rent for, I had February's paid, but I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to pay March's now because I relied on his income too. Um, it was, how I had to plan a funeral, a memorial service at 22, and I had no idea all the things that go into it, no idea how expensive a funeral is. There's just like so many things that at that age you just can't know. I mean, unless you've been in a situation where you've lost someone, there's so many things that you have to do that you just I literally would sit down every day and write down lists of things I need to accomplish that day, and it would be easily a full page long, and it would 3 or 4 of it would get done because meantime I'm having emotional breakdowns and I'm taking care of an 8-month-old, trying to work around her schedule because she obviously still needed to be taken care of. Her life wasn't, I mean, her life didn't stop just because her dad died. Diapers still needed changed. She still needed to be nursed. She still needed all of those things.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, and I can, I can relate to a certain extent with that. Um, yeah, I think you don't really understand, just the stress of trying to plan a funeral until you have to. Um, my father passed on December 23rd. The absolute worst time of the year to be trying to plan a funeral, not only from the emotional standpoint, but
You still gotta make Christmas happen for the family. You still gotta work. It's probably busiest time if you're still in retail.
I'm still in retail, so that's busy, but it just kind of is what it is. Um, well, I guess in particular for my situation, I had that was a time where I was in my leadership role in the cell phone business, and so I had issues where I didn't have store leaders, store managers in certain locations. One went out on maternity leave, one was no longer with the organization. It was bad. It just that work was already stressful by itself. Um, my grandmother, his mother, passed 18 days prior to that, so we're dealing with that. Um, it's Christmas, right? And then also because it's Christmas and then New Year, the holidays make it hard to make those plans even happen. So obviously that's not as intense as losing your husband and trying to raise an 8-month-old by yourself. So I'm not trying to say like that like what we went through is something equal. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that I can understand to a certain degree what that kind of compounding stress is like.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
No, totally does.
And so Navedi was 8 months at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about how, what is that like? What that's been like with her not really knowing who her father is.
I would say that's been a big challenge because I am raising a child who is very much like her father. So, you know, I I don't know how she ticks. Like he could look at her and say, when you share so much characteristics with a child, you can be like, I know why she's acting this. I know acting like this. I know what need is not being met or whatever. So I'm really trying to, I always say that she got the best and worst of him because like the little things that used to annoy me about him, she definitely inherited. And and it's like every year around the time she starts school, I'm always like, come on, Kyle, you leave me with this kid who I now have to help with homework. And she's so much like you. You could have taught her in a way that made sense to her. I can't do this. Um, it's kind of, I don't want to say funny, but she has inherited so much of him, but she got such a little time that she could spend with him. But she'll make a face or she'll say something and I'm like, that's your daddy right there, kid. Like it's just, and even people who knew him have commented on how much she is like him. I remember one of the most heartbreaking aspects of it is before he died, he was really trying to get her to say daddy, but she would only say mommy. The morning after he died, she looked at me and said, daddy. And I'm like, ugh, kid, you're killing me here. Like,
I was say that had to break you.
Yeah.
oh my, for the longest time, she used to do this thing whenever she saw him, she would get really excited and shake her hands and like, just kind of like, I don't know. But, she still, even up until last year, she would like zone out and do it like completely. And I'd be like, why do you do that? And she's like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel happy. And so I'm like, I don't know. I like to think that that's him visiting her and like kind of checking in on her.
Does she have his affinity for reading?
Oh my goodness, yes. And you know his sense of humor and how he didn't get sarcasm? She
Yes.
completely has that. And it's so like I've had to explain to her so many times, like, you know, somebody will say, "Get out of here, Beatty," and she'll go to leave, and I'm like, "Beatty, no, they're being sarcastic," and she'll just look and say, like, "I don't understand sarcasm, Mom." Just completely like stone. And I'm like, "Yep, there's your daddy right there."
Yeah. Yeah. I asked about the books because he would get lost in a book. That dude loved to read. Like you might get lost in like music or your video games or sports or whatever. You gave that man a book and bye.
Mhm.
And you know something we talked about in the first episode that I failed to record. I mean, somebody failed to record. Um, you know, we talked about sometimes that there's kind of a hole, and I remember saying how for me something that has been kind of with me over the last year or so. We just buried my wife's great grandfather in early October, and I have a video of him and my son. So that would be his great great grandson. Him and my son kicking the ball back and forth, and like to me that's just dope because my son is going to be able to, because he just passed away. My son is going to be able to, at least have some sort of semblance of a memory of his great great grandfather. Whereas for me, both of my grandfathers passed away before 1989. My mother's father was never involved in his life. She saw him maybe 3 times for her whole life. And then my father's father, my dad said that I met my grandfather, but I have zero recollection. But he passed away in 1988. And so I have no connection to any grandfather, and then I have no male elders at all. So like for me over the last year or so, it's been like there's something that's just not there. And I know that is something that at the age of, is she 10 now?
Yeah, she'll be 11 in May.
Yeah. I know that's something that she probably can't put into words, but I know it's something that's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember her waking up the morning after he died, and it didn't really hit me until I saw her for some reason. Like I was so just in shock of finding out that he'd been killed. And I remember looking at her and thinking, the person that you were going to be is not going to be the person you are now, because she would not have his influence. And I remember that it tore me apart, thinking that the trajectory of her life had essentially been broken completely and restarted at that point. And yeah, I worry about that. Like she's lost ties to, thankfully, his family is still very active in her life. It's kind of this become a jumble of family members, I guess. Like we have other children. They call his parents Abby and Poppy. They are as much their grandchildren as Navady is. So she's getting little pieces of him that I hope one day add up to enough, but I doubt that it will. She definitely she tries to fill in the blanks a lot. I've noticed that, oh, me and my dad did this, or she'll say things like, me and my dad went sledding. I'm like, no, baby, you guys never went sledding. Well, why didn't he take me sledding? And I'm like, baby, you were just tiny. You couldn't go sledding. Like just random things like that. She just will pick out. I can tell it kind of eats at her sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could just, like I said, I know what I'm kind of going through over the last, year and a half or 2 years with a grandfather. I can't imagine that knowing that a connection that close to just being you don't really have it. You don't really have an experience with it. I mean, even like me. So I've always said that my oldest son, he is literally a miniature me. Like he is, I think I've said it here on the podcast before, he is me in the size of a light-skinned 8-year-old. And it's really been over this last year, really since he turned 8, that my personality has really kind of jumped out of him. And so like he and I understand each other in a way that's it's just not like that with the other children that I have. So I can't imagine not being able to make that bond, and that part is what breaks my heart for Vedi.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to say that she's lucky, because that's not it, but like a part of me thinks that if it had to happen, that maybe it was better than had it happen like when she was older. You know what I mean? Because I try to like make peace with that. Like if she had been 5 or 6, she would have known what exactly she was missing. Now she's just kind of missing the idea of what could have been versus like what actually was.
Yeah, that actually makes sense, and a lot. I may have said this before on the podcast as well. I think I said this in one of our earlier episodes, but my mother and father were split up and divorced by the time that I was 4. I have zero recollection of them ever being together. And people are just like, man, don't you wish your parents would have been together? And I'm just like, nah. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't see what they saw in each other. So I get what you're saying from that point of like having to have to go through that, to have to watch a divorce and deal. I don't know. I've never known my parents to be together. There's nothing that I long for there, because when I see them interact with each other, it was never. You couldn't have ever told me that my mom and my dad were ever in love until my mom was crying tears at his funeral.
Mm.
Like I wouldn't have fully believed. Not that I wouldn't have. I believed that they were once in love, but I never believed anything was there until the day of my dad's funeral, and she is bawling her eyes out. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I had it different. Like I never remember my parents together. They were divorced. I was like a year and a half or something like that. So I never really seen them together, but I don't know more so if I wanted them together as much as I just wanted him there. But I still had my stepdad, you know what I'm saying? And he was just as great as a father, you know what I'm saying, as my real dad. But it still was times where I don't give a damn what's going on, what's happening, how great of a father he is. It's still not going to replace the fact of wanting your biological father in certain situations. And I think that's more so, you know, where it boils down for her at is, you know, her dad now is probably all she knows. You know, I got a daughter that's like that, you know, I've been with her mom since she was 2. So it's like, I'm the only father she knows. Like even when her brother talks about her father, she has no recollection of who he is. If he stood right next to her right now, she have no clue it's him. You know what I mean? Like to that point, but I still feel like at times, like no matter what, it's still that, well, I wonder, you know what I'm saying, why I do this. Maybe I get it from him, you know. And there's things that you just, it's hard that you'll never be able to answer. And that's what, you know what I'm saying, hurts for me, because it's like, I know at some point, you know, having, you know what I'm saying, the great guy that she has in her life, it's still going to be that void of, I still wonder, you know what I'm saying, what it would have been like, or, you know, why I'm like, or did I get this from? Those questions is just nobody's going to be able to answer that. Like, even though, you know, mom say, well, yeah, you that's your dad all over you. It's still not being able to see it. You know what I mean? To be able to be like, I'm just like you. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to be able to, you know what I'm saying, say that in a sense. And I think
Right.
that's the hardest part.
I think those moments are definitely going to come as she gets older. Like
Yep.
right now, the milestones she had aren't that super huge, but we're going to have like weddings and, well, wedding, hopefully. And graduating high school, you know, things like that, that she's really going to be kind of noticing that
Does she play
he's not
sports?
there. Yeah, she does cross country.
Senior night, 8th grade night. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You know, she has a stepdad. You have a not new because you guys have been married for a while, but you have a
Right.
husband. You know, talk about, you know, kind of what that relationship is like today.
With me and him or her and him? Or
Yes,
both?
both. Talk
Uh,
about
so
both relationships. That's what we'll say.
yeah, exactly. So like Kendall is absolutely amazing. He, I could not sing his praises more on. There have been so many other men who have made comments like, if you were my wife, I would not allow you to still talk about your first husband, or I would not allow you to have pictures up, or things like that. And like, our son is named after Kyle. So, you know, when we had Nate, I really wanted to name him after Kyle. And Kendall told me, yeah, Kyle gave me my daughter. Why wouldn't I name my son after him? So he has been like, he stepped up in ways that I didn't ask him to, but he's just like kind of saw every need that was there in our family and fulfilled it. Like there was a big concern I had when we started having children, me and Kendall, that if something happened to me, that our kids would be separated. Um, so he stepped in, and Kyle's family agreed, and he adopted Navady so that if something happened to me, she would be taken care of under him as well. Um, he so I have PTSD from losing Kyle the way I did. And I have very bad night terrors and flashbacks where, like, literally I will wake up screaming and crying Kyle's name. And, you know, for another man, that would probably be hard to hear your wife still crying, that upset about, you know, the man that she still is very much in love with. And he just takes it in strides. You know, he gets me a glass of water, he rubs my back, and, you know, he calms my nerves. He's I don't know, people like don't believe he's as great as he is sometimes, I think, because of how much he has really just stepped into that role. Um, he's an absolutely phenomenal person. And like I don't deserve this man. But yeah,
He's
he's
something
tried
different
to
for sure.
he
You know.
he trust me, he's annoying, but like he's and I mean, no offense to present company, but I don't really understand how great I have it until I spend time with other men and they're making comments about it. You know, and I'm
I was
like,
like,
oh,
wait. I was like, where's this going?
yeah, no, you know, like until I talk to other people and they're like, he let you name your son after your dead husband, and I'm like, well, yeah, you know,
Well, for
he,
me, it was just, you know, like all the things you named, you know, it takes a special individual within their self to be able to stand in the midst of that. And then for you to say, you know, someone that, you know, to be in love with someone who is still deeply in love with their first husband
mm-hmm,
is a powerful statement. And to be able to grasp that takes a different level of understanding and, you know what I'm saying, and truly being a man, because, you know, it's not like you're saying that you're still deeply in love, you know what I'm saying, with your ex-husband, where he's around the corner and you see him at the ball game, cross country games for your daughter and stuff. You know what I'm saying? You lost him in a different way that
Mm-hmm.
the average person hasn't. So to be able to look past just the outer shell and saying, "Oh, she's just in love with her ex-husband," how can she really love him too? It is, deep. That's really remarkable, what I'm saying, of him to be able to, look at it for what it actually is and not for what people say. Because I'm pretty sure, going into it, he had people in his corner like, "Man, you're crazy. You like, why would you, yeah, I'm just being honest. And for
No,
him
I'm
to
sure
still
they did.
say, like, he's still like, no, I still love her. Like, she's great. You know what I mean? Like, that's dope. You know what I mean? Like, you really
So
do have something special there.
I
to,
remember.
oh
I
God, are you
remember.
gonna tell?
Sorry,
No, are you gonna tell the story? I think you're gonna tell.
I don't know. But I remember you wrote a story. You wrote a status on Facebook where you said that if Kyle was your gold, he had no problem being your silver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was very early on in our relationship. We weren't even, I don't even think we were technically dating yet because we did not, I guess we were dating a
Actually,
long time before I realized we were.
okay. So, I can remember like seeing this and like I'm sure that like when you first got with Kendall, you were probably getting some whispers and some hate, like, what is she doing? Because I remember seeing the pictures and the statuses, and I'm just like, damn, that's kind of quick, low key.
Okay, so we'll get into this today, Brett. No. Yes.
Been waiting for somebody to just hop on and
Yeah.
open that can real quick.
Yeah.
Before you rip my head off, I remember when you wrote that status, I was like, that's a real ass dude right there. Like, it's all good. Whatever.
No, I got a lot of hate. And I don't think that I was kind of forced into moving on, I would say. So when Kyle died, people gave me 6 months. And then at the 6-month mark, people were insane about trying to set me up. Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you how I actually met Kendall. I will tell that story. So yeah, like people would randomly, family members, well, you should try Christian Mingle. And I had no thoughts of like wanting to even date or even like at that point I was focusing completely on like my life and my child. And I remember someone called me and it was like 2:00 in the morning. And they were like, "Hey, I've got this guy here. He's really interested in you." And I'm like,
At 2 in the
"No."
morning?
Like, yeah, 2 in the
God
morning.
damn.
I'm like, no, like he couldn't be interested in me. Like I'm a widow. Like what is wrong with this guy that he's interested in me at this point? So I was actually talking to my teenage cousin who was a teen. She was like 16 at the time. She's no longer 16, but she was like, "You should make an online dating profile." And I was like, "No, I don't want to date." And she's like, "No, that's perfect because people will assume that you're trying, but just no one likes you." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So it'll get them off my back if they think that I'm trying to date." So I went through with it and I was brutally mean to every man who messaged me. Like my profile basically was like, "I'm a widow, don't even try it." Like, like I'm not interested in you, I promise. And Kendall messaged me and the very first thing he said was, "We can get to know each other after the wedding." And I responded like, "Do women really fall for that bull crap?" And he was like, "Well, it got you to respond, didn't it?" And I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, he just put me in my place." Okay. So we became friends and he was kind of like my beard, I guess you would say, for a really long time until I realized like, hey, this is actually a thing we're doing here. Like, he fell pretty quickly for me, I guess. And I was very standoffish. I was very like not into like I remember one day I sat down and made a list and it had like 72 reasons I would never consider actually dating him. And I was really mean. I was really mean. And it's like it's one of those things that it just really developed out of a friendship and this mutual respect that, seeing how he could tolerate my grieving, I guess you would say, because I was a mess early on, and tolerate all the comments that he was getting and we were getting, like people. There was a long time of my life when I would post on Facebook about Kyle's death anniversary that I would also not post about my wedding anniversary with Kendall because they were less than 18 months apart. And I was very insecure about that fact. Very insecure that people would say like, "Oh, you didn't love Kyle because you moved on so quickly." Or, his death didn't affect you because you've moved, you know what I mean? I know that's what people were thinking, which I find kind of funny because, if his wife dies and he moves on, society kind of looks at him and says, well, he needed someone to take care of him. It's okay. So I think they kind of get a little
She
bit
just
easier
opened up a
time.
whole nother episode.
I know.
Boy.
I know.
I love it though. It's interesting that the dynamic of people trying to push you into another man's arms to make you forget your husband, to make you forget the husband you lost, and the man you end up with helps you honor the memory of your late husband.
And it's those
that's
same
a wild
people,
dynamic.
It is. I tell you, the same people though who were pushing me into him as soon as I went were the same people who were like, really?
Nah.
You've moved on? Like, you're doing this now? I mean, we've been now, Kendall and we'll be married 9 years in a couple months. So like I'm less, like I feel like our relationship has passed the time where I have to be worried that people don't realize that I can love two people.
Right.
I hope. I don't know.
But also, like, if they don't realize it, just doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I swear, every time, I don't know if you notice this, when I post about Kyle on Facebook, I have to do a disclaimer that, because I've had men message me almost routinely every time and comment about how I'm disloyal to Kendall. Or I had someone send me this, I mean, it was a paragraph like, if you were my wife, it just seems like you're not happy with Kendall and you just wish Kyle was still here. And if you were my wife, I would divorce you. And like,
I'm like, dude, we're poly.
Oh my God, that's so funny. No, I literally one time posted like, listen, if you have an issue with it, come say it to my face, because I guarantee you my husband's going to be more irritated that you're making me upset about this than he is that I'm still in love with someone. He knew the situation when he married me. Like, if he was insecure about it, he wouldn't have married me.
Right. It's just amazing how, and even to a certain degree, like I was guilty of it. Just kind of passing judgment, like damn, that was fast. Like, it's not my business. It's not anybody's business.
Not your business whatsoever.
I remember one time, Bradley, this is the story I thought you were going to tell. So I never legally took Kendall's last name. And for a long time on Facebook, I had my name hyphenated. And I
wanted to ask about this because I didn't know why it happened.
So I had to drop his name because he likes to troll people online, and I did not want people to put two and two together that my husband was the troll. And so I dropped the shepherd, and I dropped it, and I swear within 5 minutes, Bradley's like, "Can I ask you something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm an open book, fine." And he's like, "Why'd you drop your last name?" And I was like, oh, well, yeah, my husband's trolling random groups on Facebook.
Wait, I messaged you?
Yeah, you were like, why'd you drop your last name? And I was,
That's
and
something
I
you would
assumed you
notice.
were like, yeah, that relationship didn't last. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, you know what I was thinking? I do like. Well, I must have been thinking like, because that was like still like what, three
Yeah,
ish
it was
years
very early on. Yeah.
years into it. So like that was like, I'm just like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, you okay? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like
like,
she's having another mental breakdown. Great.
like you need a friend?
Yeah.
I do vaguely remember doing that now that you mentioned it. I did not remember that at all. I was like, wait, I messaged you?
That
What?
Mhm.
sound
Yep.
like you
Totally
would catch
did.
a small little thing like that. Like somebody be like, oh, they won't know. How would they know? Here
Man,
come
Mhm.
Bradley. Hey.
I know. I be figuring out stuff from the smallest little. I'll be remembering something. It'd be the smallest detail. You could be telling me a lie about something, and I'll never pick it up. But the smallest little insignificant detail that you didn't remember, Fred tell me another story. And I'm like, oh, so 2x divided by y. Like, so yeah, for sure.
So you want to know about my last name situation? Is what you're
Yeah.
wanting? Is that what you're wanting to know? Because yeah. So when we got married, I never took Kendall's last name because I knew Vady would be in school. And okay, there's another part of the story. Kendall had a vasectomy before we met. So I did not expect us to have children.
I
Both of you guys
remember
are like,
this.
both you guys are looking like, oh gosh, how
No,
does that?
I remember this. Go ahead.
Like,
Yeah,
boy, the
he
plot
got it
twist just
reversed.
turns
He got
again.
it reversed. And so I kept my last name as Muniz, and like every 6 months, I'm like, "Do you want me to change it to Kendall?" And he's like, "Nah, you can change it." When we've been married for 20 years, it's not a big deal. Like, but he loves to give me so much crap about it though, like teasing me. If we go somewhere and it's like a legal thing we have to sign, he'll be like, "Yeah, she never took my last name. I guess she's not really my wife." Like, just a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, so
That that's so funny because Stephanie doesn't have my last name, and I do the same thing to her.
oh god, does she have intentions of changing it or?
We'll do it one day. Whatever.
Yeah, it's just so much. It's so complicated. You have to change all the bills, and it's just no.
Like it's just to for show. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. What does it matter? Like it actually just does not matter.
And his last name is Shepherd, which is very common. So, like, I don't know. I think Nadean Muniz sounds a lot better than Nadine Shepherd. So I don't know.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Your choice.
So
So what? I mean, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
But all right, so and I'm pretty sure I asked this question to an extent the other day, but
My bad.
you good. But so how is your husband's and your daughter's, relationship just overall? Like, do they get along? Is there some things where it's like, oh, you're not my dad, or like what is there?
I think here recently it came up where she's kind of starting to notice that she's missing a core part of who, she is. And she's made, I think like twice she's made a comment about not so much like you're not my dad, but more like I wish my dad was here instead of you. And every time she said it, he just keeps saying, I know, baby, I wish your dad was here too. Like he legitimately does not see a difference in any of our kids, which I'm very thankful for. It's never been this is my kid and this is my kid and this is her kid and it's never been. So our third child we adopted out of the foster care system, and he posted something. It was a quote from a guy that said, I have 4 children, 2 of them are adopted. I forget which 2. And it like completely sums up Kendall 100%. Like there's no difference. I think, I hate to say this because I think my children might one day hear this, but I think he tends to favor Vady a little bit more because she does not have his ornery gene. So she's very laid back. She's very chill, where the other kids were just made for destruction.
I can't wait for the kids to subscribe.
I know. Mommy loves you guys all the same, I promise.
So I would ask then, and this may be something that's later down the road, but do you believe the adopted child and Nady will find, like a common chemistry because of, the missing parent in a sense? Or do you think it's just all gonna be like just cross the line, like, we're all good. We're brothers and sisters, and that's that,
I think it's been kind of a blessing that Navady has been adopted as well, because, going into the situation with Addie, who is our 4-year-old, I never wanted her to have this shocking realization that she's adopted. I wanted her to kind of always know, because I didn't want her to have that, like, oh my goodness, you lied to me type feeling that, sometimes I think happens if children aren't aware they're adopted. Mm-hmm. So we have been very, like, we have special dinners on their adoption days. We have special dinners when, like, we took custody of Addie. We commemorate those days. We've had Addie since she was 3 days old. So it's something that, it was so funny because Vady asked me one day, she said, does Addie know she's adopted? And I said, well, it's not something we've hidden from her, but I don't think Addie knows what the word adopted means at this point. Except though she does like to use it to play with my heartstrings. Like we'll go to the store and she'll be like, can I have donuts? And I'm like, no, it's not on the list. And she'll be like, but I'm adopted. And I'm like, get the daggone donuts. Like, fine. But Vady, so I heard Vady ask Addie, do you know you're adopted? And Addie said, yep. And she said, do you know what that means? And she just was like playing, and Addie's like, or Vady told Addie, that means you didn't come from mommy's tummy. And Addie's like, I know, I came from God. And just like went back to playing. And I'm like, she has the confidence of, I don't know what, but like it's sky high. So I think that they have kind of bonded, and that the word adopted is in our house, and they're both aware of, I mean, I don't really think either of them comprehend fully what that all entails, but I think we're kind of lucky in the sense that it'll make those transitions a little bit easier, I hope.
Yeah, the realization when it's just the thing that you've always just done, and it's the thing that you've always just know. There's not this, oh, I believed this thing for so many years, and to suddenly, I literally just had a situation happen like that over the summer. There's this thing I believed for over 20 years, and then the truth came out, and it was just like, well, shit, this sucks. I mean, legit. So, yeah, I think to grow with it, just what I can compare it to is, we never, in my house, in my childhood, we never, and I need to say this quietly so that my kids don't hear it, we never believed in Santa Claus. It was just never, I knew from the earliest point, and I always say, like, I lived in an apartment in downtown Detroit. We ain't had no chimneys. And in the early 90s, we didn't have white people. Like, it just didn't happen. So did
you believe that white people existed? Or...
I believe that white people existed, right? Now, to pull that back together, so my wife and that side of the family is very much into the spirit of Christmas. Oh, you've got to go to bed. We've got to get all the presents under the tree the night of Christmas Eve, because Santa's gonna come in and blah blah blah. And I'm waiting for the day where there's so like we have this weird dynamic where I don't participate in the lie. I don't spoil the truth, but I don't participate in the lie. But I'm waiting for the day, and I think it's going to happen soon, especially with my 8-year-old mini me, because he's a thinker like me. He's going to realize we don't have a chimney here, like. But all that said to say is like I never got my heart broken with the Santa Claus because it was never in my 5 head. That was just for you.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
So talk about we talked a lot about Kyle and life after that, and you did have another tragedy, a heartbreak that you went through just over a year ago, or about a year ago, I should say.
Yeah.
So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, so I was pregnant with our 5th child, and we'd had miscarriages in the past. So, once you're past that 12-week mark, you kind of think that things are great and you're excited and you're planning and whatever. And by far, my pregnancy with Odessa, which was her name, was the easiest. Completely, I mean, I had the normal aches and pains you have near the end, but there was no like issues with like diabetes or hypertension or anything. So a week before I was set to be induced, I woke up, and she always woke up with me, and she would just kind of like kick and squirm, and then she would settle down. We'd go about our day. And that day I woke up and I noticed that she wasn't waking up, and it was very abnormal to me, but it wasn't enough that I was like completely freaked out. So I, chugged orange juice, did whatever, and she still wasn't moving. And so I called my mom and I said, we kind of need to go get this checked out. I'm sure it's nothing. But we just for, my sanity. So we were up there, and the whole way up there, even me and my husband are talking about if they're going to induce me a week early at 38 weeks versus making us come back another week. And we were, it wasn't anything where we were alarmed, I guess. So we get there, and he has to wait out in the waiting room because of COVID. And they wheel me back, and at that point, the nurse came in, and she was doing the Doppler, and she was having trouble distinguishing, she said, between my heartbeat and her heartbeat, because she was picking up heartbeats that were jumping between 130 and 140, which, if you know anything about the human body, it's 140 is not a normal resting heart rate. So they thought it was hers. And I remember the doctor came in and pushed her aside and just put the ultrasound on me, and he looked at me and he said, "Uh-oh, we have a problem." And I said, and I'm thinking, like my water broke and I'm delivering, like I didn't think. And he said, the baby has no heartbeat. And at that point, I'm like, how can that be? Everything's been perfect. Like I went into pure shock mode. Now, mind you, I'm completely alone still at this point. My husband's in the waiting room, still happy as can be that he's going to have this baby in a week. And I'm like, what do you mean she has no heartbeat? And he instantly went from like, before he found out she was gone, she was the baby. As soon as he said baby has no heartbeat, she became the fetus. And it became very medical. It became, I'm switching this over. There's no blood running through her veins. She's not moving. She's not practicing breathing. Like all these things. She's dead. What do you want to do about, very like blunt and and I'm just sitting there. I'm in shock. My husband, mind you, still has no idea what's going on. So, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I have my microphone off. But he probably just like looking at his phone or.
Yeah, he was. I finally said, "Can we get my husband?" And they went and got him, and I could instantly. He was like jovial coming in, and as soon as he saw my face, his face fell. And they gave us the option of like doing a C-section right away, inducing us, or sending us home. and waiting for labor to start. And I said, there is absolutely no way I can go home with this child in me and my children look at me and not understand, what's exactly happening. Like, how am I supposed to tell my children that their sister died and she's still there? Like, I look like I did when I left that morning. So, I chose induction because there was no way I was going to put my kids through that. And at the time, they did not realize that I had started internally bleeding. So it's called a concealed abruption, where like my uterus had tore away from the placenta. Typically, there are signs that it happens. There were no signs. So I was just filling with blood continuously. And I was fine for about 23 hours, 24 hours. And then my heart rate just tanked. And it was at one point like 20 over 40 or 40 over 20. It was ridiculous. To the point where I was in and out of consciousness. A nurse, at one point I woke up and a nurse said, "Where's your husband?" And I didn't even know he had left. He had gone to call funeral homes. And I said, "I don't know." She said, "Honey, if he wants to say goodbye to you, he needs to get here now." And like, I'm like not understanding what's going on. I am in so much shock. I asked her where I was going.
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
"Oh, where are we
God
going?"
damn.
And she's like, "Honey, he needs to get here now." So I'm calling Kendall. I'm like, "I don't know where I'm going, but they're taking me." And, she took my phone because at that point I passed out. But, we talked a lot about my faith the first session. Like the whole time I was in labor, I thought that they were wrong at that and that God would intervene and that this was going to be like the miracle that we could say, like, this is where God saved the day. And it was not until she was out and I had woken up and, like I had to have a C-section. A typical C-section is less than an hour. With Odessa, it was like 2.5 hours. And I
Wow.
woke up at one point and I said, "Has she been born yet?" And he said, "Yeah, she's been out for about 45 minutes. And I asked why she wasn't crying. And he told me, he said, "Sweetheart, they told you that she was gone when they brought you back in." And I couldn't believe it. We were able to stay with her in the hospital for a little bit under 2 days. And, that time, I don't have a lot of memories, honestly, from that time because I was on so much medication and they were basically just trying to replenish my blood and get me stable enough that I was on the labor and delivery ward. So I wanted to get out there. I mean, I could hear babies crying. I could hear, all this. I wanted out of there as soon as I could. Um,
I feel that.
so yeah, I was just,
Not mad at you at all.
yeah, it was absolutely, I mean, I remember the anesthesiologist came in and he was like checking me over and he's like, "Oh, congratulations." And I'm like,
Bro, are you tone deaf? Like,
"Are you serious?" And then he looked over and so when your baby passes away, they have something called a cuddle cot and it basically looks like a bassinet, but it's a refrigerator. And it prolongs the death
yeah,
process. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a morgue basically.
Yeah.
Oh my
So
God!
he looked
Wow.
over and saw that and he goes, "Oh shit." And I'm and I couldn't help but laugh because just the look on his face and him like cursing at this moment. I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, thanks. I'm happy to not be pregnant, but I kind of wish she was alive." Like,
Yeah, that's just
which
wow.
it's kind of been it's been a very different grieving process from when Kyle died. I always like to say that because everybody will say like this is the worst loss you will ever go through. This is the worst pain you'll experience. And I've told people like y'all said that a decade ago. Like which one is it? Pick one.
Right.
And I've told people that it's a different kind of loss. Like every loss you experience is a different kind of loss. It doesn't hurt less or more. It's just a different kind of pain. And it's not really something you can prepare yourself for. I think I thought because I'd done a lot of therapy after Kyle died. I guess I thought because of that, I could fall back on the therapy, the coping mechanisms I had learned before, but it's been a completely different ball game.
Wow. Yeah. Jesus. Some of that stuff we didn't get into on the first time, so it's just
Yeah.
it's slapping me hard right now. I mean, obviously I can't relate, but you had talked about how there's almost like a support group of other women that have
Mhm.
gone through the same type of loss,
Mhm.
and you had mentioned how I don't want to tell your story, but I remember you were saying you have been able to find encouragement from women who have gone through similar types of loss, and then been able to be a light for others. And
Mhm.
I was hoping you could kind of talk about that again.
Yeah, it's something that I've definitely become aware of. Our society does not do prickly things well. I guess I could refer anything that's not like that's kind of abnormal from the status quo or doesn't show us in the picture perfect like light we don't do very well, I don't think. And death is very much one of them. So I try to make it a point where if I hear of someone who has lost a husband young or who's gone through a miscarriage or who has lost a baby or something I can relate to, I very much try to reach out to them and just let them know that they're not alone. I never say, I know what you're going through, because I think that's such a slap in the face sometimes. But I'll say, like, this is what I experienced. This is what helped me. This is how I have managed to survive what most people would deem unsurvivable, I guess you could say. I, there's people in my life who thinks it's absolutely weird that I do it, but I mean, if I can bring comfort to someone else, like the things that have made the most impact on me is just hearing other people say, this happened X amount of years ago, and I'm still able to find joy in life, and I'm still able to experience good times. I think sometimes when you're grieving, you get so stuck in this is how it's going to be forever. This is the sadness I'm going to feel forever. I'm always going to feel overwhelmingly crushed. But, good times come. Like, it's not a permanent state. I mean, I still have very rough days. I do, but I've noticed that I'm still able to have really good days too.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing about like grief is that you just learn to cope with it over time,
Hmm.
and then sometimes like you might just have a random bad day, and like sometimes it's like stuff might trigger you, and you don't even expect it to trigger you, and it just does. But I think that your story, I don't want to insult anyone or downplay anyone's loss over another or anyone's pain over another. But I think that, somebody's going to be able to listen to this and say, damn, she got through that. I can get through this.
I think sometimes everyone says that, but you're not really given a choice. You just you can you can just roll over and die, or you can make something of it. My biggest goal in life is when I see my child again and when I see my husband again. I want to have like this full life to tell them, like, I did this and I did this. And I don't want to just be like, I sat at home and was sad because you weren't there. I want to be like, oh no, we adopted a child. We went to parks every weekend one summer with the kids. Like I want to have these experiences to share with them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my motivating factor. I don't know if that's good enough reason to keep going on, but it is for me.
If it's good enough for you, that's what matters.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. I appreciate you doing this with us for the second time.
Not a problem.
I don't have anything else. I don't know how you feel for it.
Nah, I don't know. I'm just say, if you can understand the first episode and get through it, I think it's something to pick up from both episodes, really.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the first one didn't come out the way we wanted to, but I think she dropped a lot of gems, and you could probably find help or just something to take from both episodes. So that's all I wanted to add. But I appreciate you for coming back a second time. Glad we could do it again. Glad we could dig something different out of you, and get another look out of it. I'm gonna say again, you're one strong, incredible individual,
Thank you.
Now we know that you have an even stronger, incredible husband by your side. So
he's gonna love that. Keep that part in there, Brad, because he's going to love that.
So, most definitely, shout out to both of you. Keep pushing forward, keep being great. Keep doing greatness. We need more people like you for sure out here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? If they want to be contacted, or if they want to contact you, what's your preferred method of communication?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I said the first time, if you send me a message, just let me know how you're finding me, because I don't usually add people if I don't recognize the name. So if you just send me a message or whatever saying, hey, I listened to the episode and want to talk, that'd be great.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll have that info in the show notes. So check your phone. You can check your device, whatever you're listening to us on, and you can find where to follow us. And referencing to what Fred said, so the first episode that has the audio that's admittedly rough, it is, or the first version of this episode, it is a live video on the What's Happening Facebook page. So by all means, feel free to check that out. If you can get through it, I promise you, y'all know by now, we as many ums and ahs as we do on this show. It is not rehearsed. It is not practiced. It is raw. It is real, and it is. There's another there's going to be some different things said there, and Nadine dropped some amazing gems in both episodes. So I would encourage you to head over there, follow us, follow Nadine, follow the show, and we will be back with you next week. Thank you, Nadine, for doing this a second.
Not a problem.
And we won't need it for a third, but you are welcome back anytime. Y'all have a good night.
Peace.
Alrighty.